Hello friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can build a broadcast app. A broadcast app is where message is sent from one end and gets received by connected clients. Why is this useful? Think of it as you building an application or a system for an organization. When the top man over there wants to communicate with the subs, does he need to send individual message? No. In case the message is general message, he can then broadcast it. Now, when he broadcasts it, it gets received to all of the subordinates. And you can achieve that easily using SignalR. So with this, we're going to implement that with a front end of Blazor WebAssembly and also with the back end of Web API. Aside from that, you're also going to implement authentication. We want to make sure that before clients get connected to the hub, this client must be authenticated, and we want to make sure of that. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing. But before we jump to the code, if you know you haven't subscribed, that is the time you do that. And also, when you finish watching this video and you're happy, you've learned something new, then do not forget to give me a thumbs up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, then launch a Visual Studio, create a new project whereby you're going to be having our share library, which is going to be used by both the client and also the back end. And then we're going to have our Blazor assembly for our front end, and then we're going to have our web API as our back end. And then we carry on. So let's launch it and let's follow. So I'm going to create blank solution and then add these three projects. So that is our project that we have, our shell library, our front end, and our back end. Now let's go and create models which will be shared by both the back end and the front end. So what are these models for? Definitely there's going to be a DTOs. Now, since we're going to implement authentication, definitely we're going to be using register and our login. We need these DTOs to create, to be used in our controller. So I think putting that in the shared library is the best place to be, because we're going to be using that both in the client and also in the server. Now let's go and install packages that we will be using in both the front end and the back end. So these are the packages that we need for the backend. We need the JWT, since you're going to be implementing that. We need identity, so we can, in case you want to extend identity user, we can do that. Then I am installing Swashbuckle for my API docs. You can decide to use Killer. But well, I want to use this for now. Then we have SQLite for database and our tool for migration. Okay, so let's go and install packages for the client too, which is the Blazor WebAssembly. So for the client too, these are the packages that we need. We need component.authorization package, So we can use authorized components. We also need the SignalR client so we can connect. We need local storage so we can save our token to local storage. If you want to use session storage, you can also use my package for session storage. And then we need a JWT, the token, so we can get the claims from the token which has been issued by the server. Okay, so these are the packages that we need. Now we are good. Let's go and create a model for that. We're going to work with the server first. So let's go and do that. So these are the two models that we need. We're first going to create our app user. It extends identity user, and here we can add one property here as string, and let's say this is your name. So you want to grab name here. Then for our user connection, we want to store, as soon as you connect to SignalR Hub, you have the connection ID, right? So you want to keep that connection ID. So later on, we can send a message to that connection ID for the client to receive it. And you want to map it with the user ID. So that's the reason why we have this user ID and our connection ID. So now that we have this, let's go and create our DB context. And that is where we're going to specify our identity config for the database. So now that we have our DB context created where we specify a table name for the user connection, let's go and register our database connection. So in here, you can see we are specifying a connection string, and here I'm specifying the connection string inside this. But well, the best way is to put that in the connection. They have setting, so I think let's follow that. So we're going to apply migration here. So you can see from here, migration was successfully created. We have a database attached to our project using an SQLite DB. Now let's go and register our JWT service in the program.ts file in the server project. But first of all, before we add the JWT service, we need to add identity since we're going to be implementing that with Identity Manager. So when you have a look with our service that we've done over here from the registration, we've done all that we need in order for this broadcast app to work. Now, if when we take a close look here, we are adding a database connection string. And I believe you know that here we want to add our identity, since you're going to be using identity to create the user as or validate the user as well. You want to register the service for that. And in case maybe you want to add rows, then we need to add the row service. So we have also added that. We go back to the JWT authentication, we specify a default scheme, and then we want to specify the JWT itself with our issuer audience and our issuer sign-in key. We're going to get it from the config settings, that's app.json. We're going to set these values here so we can grab them and use them here. Then we want to add an event. Now this event is going to attach the token that's going to generate to the header. You know, with SignalR, it uses WebSocket. So before connection is created, we want to make sure that the token here is attached to the request before it sends, so that we can be authenticated. Once you're authenticated in the client, we can also be authenticated in the hub. Okay, so this is what we need. And then when we go to the middleware pipeline, we are mapping our Swagger. And I believe as for this, you know this already from .NET 6 and above up to I think 8. We have been using Swagger. So we do have to map the pipelines. We register the service. We also register the authorization, and then SignalR, since we're going to be using that for our communication. And then we want to map it for authentication and authorization. We use this middleware. Okay, the next one that we're going to be using here is we're going to be adding CORS. Now CORS, we want to allow any method, any header, and we want to set this to open so that all origins can access this. But I think this is wrong. We need to use a specific origin. Okay, so maybe we can set up with origin, and then we're going to specify the name of the client. So we are not doing that. That is the reason why I am using this. Then we're going to create a hub, and this hub, we're going to name it as Broadcast Hub. And in that, we want to create the URL of it. So if you want to access this, the address of this API / this broadcast will give you access to the hub. That is what we are doing here. Now that we have this configured or registered, let's go and create a hub for this communication. Now, there are two methods that we can override in the hub. That is when user or client gets connected and when client get disconnected. When a client connects to the hub, we want to get the claims before, because you know that before client gets to this, this client is already authenticated. So we want to have the ID of that client from the context or from the token. We want to check if it is not null. We want to get a connection ID. The reason why we are mapping the connection ID with the name ID or the user ID is connection ID does not persist. As soon as the user relogs in, a new connection ID will be created. So for easy identification, we want to grab the current connection ID and I'll map it with the user ID, which does not change, so that we can easily see this person. Okay, so we want to make sure that we clear all IDs related to this specific user before a new ID is mapped and save it. So we gather it over here by populating user connection, and then we're going to save it to the table, and that is how we connect. Now, when the user disconnects, we want to go to the table and I remove it because as I speak, this user is no more connected. So you want to remove it from the table. Let's do that. Anytime that a user or client get disconnected, we want to remove this client record from the table. And that is what we are achieving here. So we have connected and our disconnected method implemented nicely, and which will work as soon as user connect or disconnect. Let's specify our JWT section in our app.setting.json before we forget that. So from here, going to add it here. We have our key, our issuer, and our audience with the section name as AWT, and now these are the keys and these are the values. Now that we are done, let's go and create a controller. Now in a controller, we're going to create two controllers, one for authentication and one for broadcast. The authentication is responsible for creating and also logging in by providing a token at the end. And now for broadcast has the duty to broadcast message from this endpoint to all connected clients who are connected to, let's say, the hub. So when you look at the register method, we want to create an instance of this app user. Then from the user manager that we have injected, we can go and create it and specify the password, which is a plain password for the encryption to be done. Okay, then if it works, we want to return this, else then show bad request. We're done with that. Let's go and handle the login endpoint and check it out. So when you look at our login method, I'm using the old use case that we used for, I think, the last project, not the last tutorial that I did. I'm using the same thing. For login, we want to get the email. In case we get it, we want to check the password. If they do match, talking about the current password and the old password that we have in our system. If it does, then um, we want to check for here. We want to add row, but for row, there is the use case I'm doing. I want to check in case the email starts with an admin, then definitely that's going to be an admin. And I want to generate the token, and I'm passing the row of an admin. Else, that's going to be user. We need to create a method known as generate JWT token, which accepts these two payloads, right? So these are the parameters. We have the user and we have the admin as string. And then it's going to return string at the end, as you can see from here. Let's do that. So that is a method of generating a token. We taking in the app user and also the role. We prepare our claims where we take in the name ID, which is an ID. We take in the name, the username, and also the email and a row. After that, you want to use that to create a token. We add an expiry date of maybe 2 hours from the date created. Okay. Now this is going to be called in the login. So that's why I'm making it as private. So we are done with that. Let's go and handle our broadcast controller. So when you look at our endpoint that we are creating, we are injecting a hub that we created, and we cannot directly inject that unless we pass it into the interface of iHub context. In that, we have a hub instance created, and we want to get all connections IDs and the username from the table that we created and observed the records in. We want to check in case it's not equal to 0. Then we want to look through, and now to each client, we want to um, send pass this message to it. Now we're creating an event here which will be subscribed by the client. So as you can see from here, that is sent to this event, and now we have the message that we are attaching to this. Okay, so this is what we need to do for our broadcast endpoint to work. So now we are done with an endpoint. So when we run our project, we're going to have access to the two controllers, but our authentication controller is going to work for now. Since we don't have client to get connected to the hub, we might not see that in action. But let's test our authentication and check this out. So we have an issue. We can check it from here. So broadcast hub. Okay, so we need to include the reference. And I think that is all. So we have it activated, but we are not allowing that to pop up in the browser. So when we check our line settings from our HTTPS, line from browser is set to false. Let's set it true, and let's have our line URL set to Swagger. Let's restart this. Our endpoint is ready, so we can go ahead and register. Let's maintain the default with our email as admin. Then we have, I think I'm going to use Netcode for the username. Then we have our email and password. Let's register. And that is succeeded. So we're going to log in. And there you go. This is our token. When you grab this token to verify what we have in there, we can check from here. Then that is an ID that we have. That is a name. This is a given name, email address, the row, expire, issue, and our audience. Okay. So the component of our token, we have them here. They are well formed, and we can read them from this. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is we're going to create a client, which is our WebAssembly that we have already added. And then we're going to make sure that we consume this token and also authenticate the client. And then we can go ahead and call the hub. So the very first thing that we're going to be doing in the client is to create our custom auth state provider. That's going to be responsible for authenticating the user. And that is what we need to create our authentication state provider. Now, you see, since it's an abstract, we can override the method known as get authentication state in that we implement a local storage. Remember that we installed one of my packages, which is a local storage service. And in that, we're using that service to get the local storage. Now, with this, the value that you want to keep in there, you want to encrypt it. So the state cannot be seen, and we encrypt it. And you can also save it raw. You can also use that from. And I think I have a method here that you can use. We have get item as string async. By here, I'm going to encrypt that. Okay, so we want to retrieve it from the local storage, and then we check in case it isn't null, the anonymous, which is for claims principal, which takes in the claims identity that we created over here. We want to set it to this method and pass on the token. This token contains a claim, so we can extract the claims from this and now set to an instance of this claim principal. And that is exactly what we're doing here. It accepts the token, then we want to read the claims and then return the claims with authorization here, authentication type. And then we reset it, and then we return from result this authentication state with this anonymous, which now takes in the claims principal with specific identity. Okay. And also in case it is null, meaning token is not found, it means user is not authenticated, and that time anonymous is going to be null. So we want to also return this anonymous to the user. And then the last part here is to notify our state change. As soon as everything set, we need to update the state that, hey, the game state has changed to get it reloaded and get all things set up. So we call this here, we pass in this anonymous, which is the instance of this claim principal, to return and make sure the state has been refreshed. Okay, so that is what we need. Now that we are good here, we can go ahead and create our service for this SignalR, which is our broadcast service. So let's do that. So when you check from our broadcast service, we're injecting a local service. Now this local storage allows us to retrieve values from the local storage service from the browser. In that we want to create a hub connection instance, and when this method is called, we pass in a parameter of URL, definitely which is referring to the server SignalR hub URL. Then we want to get a token from the local storage, which is our JWT token. When we have it, we want to authenticate this. We want to add this token as a query string or query parameter to the WebSocket. And then we want to start connection. Then from here, we created an event that we're going to subscribe to. Here we're going to subscribe. So we see we're using this on means attach it to this method that we did in the server. Okay, so now that we are good in here, we go to our component and try to create a login component and register and try to consume this hub connection in that. So let's go to our layout. We have our route. I think this app.razor. We need to first authorize this route. So we can use authorize route view to authorize this. And that's not going to be doing is to create a login component. So from here, let's do it. So when you check our login, we are having an edit form which takes in, I think, email and password with the button of submit type. When it's being called, you want to make a call to this API, calling this endpoint. And then you want to check in case it is success, you want to read, since you're going to return a string as GWT token, you want to read that string. And then when we have something in there, we want to store it in local storage by encrypting that. Then we want to call this auth provider as the customer that you created. And in that, you created a method known as notify auth change. You want to call that and then navigate to the home page and make sure we force reload that. So when we do that, we're going to get us authenticated using this authentication task, because here we are notifying it. So it's going to change from the authentication state of false to true, as now you authenticated, whilst it takes in the claims and now process it using this claim principal, which claims identity. Okay, so this is what we need to do to make sure we log in. Quite simple. Now for registration, it's quite so simple that we can do it now. Let's create a component for register component and do that. So when you look at this, we have an edit form which takes in the register module from our DTO. We need a name which takes in the name of this. Then we need our username over here. We need email, and then we need a password. Okay. After that, we're going to have register async. Now, when this method is called, we want to call this endpoint. Then the response, we want to check in case it's true. Then we can load this. I think there's no need for us to force load and do that. We can simply return to login, so we can log in. All right. So that is the best thing to do. All right, so we have an issue here. What is it? It doesn't contain username from this register DTO. If I pick definition, it has name, username. Okay, so authentication set is done, and we can now authenticate ourselves nicely. But we need to register the service that we created. Now, from your front end, you go to the program.ts file, and that is where all the services that we have created, we need to register them here. So let's first set the address, the base address of an API to this. So let's go to the back end, check the properties, and we grab this. And then in our client, program.ts file, where's mine? I cannot see mine. That is it. Let's replace this. So these are the services that we need to register. We set the base address, we add this authentication state so that we don't need to add this cascading auth state component in our app.razor file. We add authorization call, we add local storage service from the package that I created, and then with our SignalR or broadcast service that we created, we need to also register that as code. Now let's go to the home page, and that is where we're going to subscribe or connect or start the connection, and make sure we check if you're authenticated or not. Then we directly log in and start. So let's see from the pages home component, we can go in and authorize or check for authentication. Maybe we can use this. If you are authorized, then we want to see this. If you are not, then you want to see that. And I believe you know this, what we're doing. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is we want to have the message. Maybe let's say this is paragraph. And here we have in this message. This message is going to be the message that the server, the sender is going to send, going to broadcast. As a client, we're going to receive the message through this, and that is where we want to display this message. So let's have this variable created. And then we need to inject some services. That is what you're going to be using. broadcast service that we created. We need a local storage service also. Now you can register all this in the import.razor file to escape duplicating these codes in the various components. But I think we're having it only in two pages or two files, so I think that's okay. Now, in order for us to check authentication, we need to use this cascading on state to check for the tags or state. So let's implement that. So that is all we need to do here to make this work. So when you take a close look here, as soon as the page initializes, you want to check if user is authenticated. In case the user is not authenticated, we want to direct the person to the login to get himself authenticated. Else, we want to check if the state is connected already, then we don't want to call it again. We want to call this once as soon as it's connected, and that is all. Then, in case it isn't, then we want to do it here. There is a reason why I am using try catch here. This could have an issue with that. As soon as when you run the app for the first time, app is going to be null, and now this is going to throw an exception. So when you choose an exception, this cannot run. And now when exception is handled, we want to call only this to start it. The next time that it runs, by then this has already started, so we can have access to the state and then continue on with that. Okay. Then we have our subscribe message handler. So in our home component, you want to subscribe to the message so we can retrieve the message from the hub, as you can see here. So that is the parameter coming in, and they want to receive that and assign it to the message variable that we created here, which displays down here. Okay, so now that we are good, let's go and run this and check this out. So we can just run both the API and the client. Yeah, so we have the server and now the client also running. Let's check from here, and that is the server running. And with this, there's also the front end. So when this runs for the first time, let's see, when you check the inspect, and when you check from the application and check from the local storage, that's where you're going to have the key. But let's see what you see, that no service reset for auth provider, of course. We forgot that. So let's rerun this again. Let's open our SQL database with dbeaver. I'm going to locate to where my database is. And that is my database, the broadcast DB. And in my table, I have this user connection. So if I open that, let me also open ASP.NET users. So currently this is the account that we have. Now when you check the user connection, user is not authenticated, so we are not having any, user is not connected to the hub. So we're not having user ID and our connection ID. Now let's go and check it out first. Now, because as soon as it gets to the login, the home page, since you're not authenticated, it has directed us to the login. Now we're going to log in over here and we use user at. I think I forgot let's check from here. That is admin at admin. Okay, so let's use that. Now let's go and put breakpoint to the login. Now that is hit. So let's read. When you check here, is it successful? Okay, yeah, it is. So we can go and read and then retrieve the token. So this is the token that we have. We're going to save it and call the state. So we save it. Now it is saved. We notify and then we navigate to login and now we are in. When you go to inspect and now check for applications, to localhost, you can see now we have the token here. Now it is authorizing. So when you check here, that's where we are connecting to the hub. Now let's see. So we grab the token and then here we have the token from the local storage. We want to pass on to the URL. That's the URL over here, broadcast. We pass the token as query parameter. Then we're going to start the hub. Now here, when we are connected, as soon as we start, it means we're going to get connected. We want to do this, get the context. And you can see from here, we are authenticated. So when you check this, this is our user. Is authenticated, is equal to true. This name Netcode. And we have these claims. Now we can go and proceed. Then we save this. Now we are authorized and we also connected to the hub. Let's check from the table to see whether the user ID is created. So from the user connection, refresh this, and we see that we have the user ID, then we have the connection ID here. Okay, now let's grab this, open another one. Maybe I want to open another browser so we can. So I have opened this. I'm going to paste this here. Then we need to log in. We need to also create an account. So let's go and register. Now with this, register. This is name. Now we go to register. Now let's log in and check it out. So we are logging in and I can see we are connected. So this is it. And then we are also connected. So we have two IDs or two clients connected now. Let's go and check our table to see whether we have the same. Where is it? Our table. Okay. Now if I refresh this, you can see now we having this, right? Now let me close one. So I'm closing this. If I close this, see what's going to happen. Now this is hit, right? And now continue. It's going to remove that. Check it out. One is off. Did you see that? Now let's go and bring it again. Let me open once again. Okay, and we are still connected again. So we're still going to have different ID, but with the same user ID. We are having different connection ID by the same user ID. Let's check from the table. So you refresh this and you can see we have it the same user ID but different connection ID, and we have that and discarded the old one. Now we're going to broadcast message, and after the broadcast we must see this message on both clients. So let's get the endpoint. That is the endpoint. So for this, we're going to broadcast this. So that is the message that I want to send it out there for everyone in this company. There's going to be a meeting after closing, right? So if I send this, let's see what will happen. Let's go. Now this is sent, success. Now let's go to the client and now check it up from there. Now you can see here, there will be meeting after closing. There's the first one, right? Let's check the other one too. Let's look up for the other one. I think it's missing now. Okay, and we have it. So you see we have this here. Now I'm going to bring the API again. And now this is the API. So I'm going to specify the time. So let's say, and let me add. So I have added the time to it. Now if I click on send, check it out. So we see each of the client has received it. So that's the way to broadcast message. Now, before a user can connect, user must be authenticated. And you've seen that we also added authorized attribute here, meaning if you're not authenticated, you cannot even access this endpoint. And also in the client, if you're not authenticated here, you cannot also get connected. So we are having two-layer authentication that we check in before you can connect to the hub. Yes. So we've seen how to broadcast message from one end to all connected clients. We've seen how to authenticate clients before they even get access to the hub. All right. So I believe you've learned something in here. If you did so, then give me a thumbs up to this video. All right, so stay tuned and I'm going to catch up again for the next informative content as this. Stay tuned and take care.